the OTP presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau is for those who make plans for everything except themselves. We make it easy and affordable for Tennesseans who don't have a group or employer plan. Visit fbhp.com to learn more. Thanks for listening to the OTP here in Indianapolis. Rhett Bryan, Ramon Foster, Coach Mac. I'm Amie Wells. We're all here, and we are wrapping things up. We are getting ready to head back to Nashville. It has been a great week here in sunny, for the most part, Indianapolis. In
and
Indiana.
Much warmer than usual.
Much warmer than usual. There was a little bit of rain, but we are in a windowless room, and so we barely even knew about it.
There it is.
I mean, day, night, hot, cold. We don't really know.
We heard a little bit of the storm the other. That's the only thing we heard.
Well, because everybody left the room to go make sure that was actually rain.
Watch rain.
Yeah, it was
Imagine
weird.
that.
It was a weird thing.
Imagine
but
that.
I guess if you haven't seen the outside in a while, it's a good excuse.
But I
to
guess
get
watching
up.
rain is better than watching paint dry.
Yes.
That's what that could
I would
be.
agree with that. Anyway, a lot has been happening here beyond just the weather. And the thing about the Combine that we are always reminded of when we get here is it's not just the Combine activities. So, you know, the interviews and the workouts and the media availability and all of that. That is a large part of the Combine. But then there is the Combine within the Combine. And that's the Combine that happens in this windowless room where everybody mills around and talks to one another. And that happens in the restaurants in the evenings or the hallways or maybe at a Starbucks. There are just things that happen around Indianapolis, and that is where the real off-season free agency, the lead up to the draft, that's where the good stuff takes place, right, Mac?
Well, this is just a huge information event.
Information event.
And that's what it is. And you bring your questions in here, but you also have to be able to come out of it with some answers too. And that's in a lot of different areas. You mentioned the play, but in the business you call it chum in the water. Anybody's ever been deep sea fishing? I mean, you throw a lot of big bait out in the ocean to see if you can catch a bigger fish, and that's what you do here. And it starts here, and it starts in all those different avenues that you talk about, but it finally zeroes into some really important conversations. And this is the genesis of all of it, because you're face to face. You're face-to-face with a lot of people, and you're face-to-face with not people that can just say, maybe this is what's happening. You're face-to-face with decision makers. So if you're a decision maker yourself, sooner or later you need to talk to decision makers. This is where it is.
And there's a lot of news that ends up coming out or things that are reported that change the way that teams are approaching what is going to happen in the coming days and weeks because of that information. So, for example, Kansas City saying that they think Travis Kelce is going to be coming back for the 2025 season. That changes the way that they are approaching what their roster is going to look like going forward, because they think that they are going to have their all-pro generational tight end for another season. Similarly, like the Browns saying that, no, we're not really interested in trading Myles Garrett, thanks. That changes the way that they approach what their roster is going to look like. And it also changes the way that other teams are approaching it, because that guy's not going to be available in free agency potentially. Another one is the Tennessee Titans. There were reports, they've not been confirmed by the team, but there were reports that Harold Landry has asked for a trade. That will change the way that Brian Callahan and Mike Bergonzi are approaching what this roster is going to look like, both through free agency and the draft, because that's a guy who was very productive for the Tennessee Titans throughout his career. So all of those things have an impact, and Rhett, it just changes kind of the chemistry of every team as these things start to leak out throughout the week.
Potentially, absolutely. And when you think about whatever happens with Myles Garrett, whether he's moved on from or not, and they grant his wishes, this medical information, Mac always talks about the interviews and the medical stuff is what's the biggest things in this. The testing is there to confirm what scouts and people have seen on tape. And so, Abdul Carter is at the podium this week with a gajillion people around him, and the reports come out that he has a slight stress fracture in one of his feet. Drew Rosenhaus, his agent, has said, don't think it's, surgically needed to be repaired. And then there's, the reports that have come out later in the week here where he is going to work out at his pro day. He is not going to have surgery, but, he's recovering from the shoulder that he had. He's playing with one arm in the college football playoff. And now there's this. And you're also, as I've been going around to these podiums talking to the prospects in this, learning who will work out and who will not, who's had some off-season surgeries already. And there's just all of this. And then you get the league news that they're going to use technology. They're going to keep chain gangs at games for a backup, but they're going to use part of the Hawkeye system that Sony put out, and they're going to use that to see the down and distance markers and see whether guys made first downs or not. And the fascinating thing about that is 6 cameras will be used for the virtual line to game technology, 12 boundary line cameras, and 14 Hawkeye SkeleTrack cameras that monitor more than 24 skeletal points on a player's body to check to see if this guy's over the line to gain. All 30 stadiums, international stadiums where league games will be played, will be equipped with a total of 32 cameras to finally figure out, was this a first down or not? And, it's about time on that. And then, there's other news that have come out. Troy Vincent came out a couple days ago and said there's actually going to be some more things that will be expanded into instant replay, but there are only certain penalties that are called within the game. It's not a New York buzz down deal. It's a replayable deal that on some different penalties that are called within the game that will actually expand instant replay.
I wonder, will that be an automatic call from somebody in stadium upstairs, or will a coach have to throw a flag on those circumstantial calls like that? Because a face mask that you missed, that's a first down for the offense right there. And I wonder, will that be a stadium operator, or will that be a coach or a coach's assistant that call that? And they got to hash it out, I know, right?
Right, because this stuff is coming out of the league meetings that are going on. And so, all kinds of things come out of those. And, the whole – thing about the tush push, whether that's going to be outlawed or not, or the brotherly shove, or whatever it's called in your neck of the woods. But that's the thing that's so crazy about this event, Amy, and Mac's right, information event, because you have all the stuff going on here, you have the league meetings, you have just everything that's going on, and also knowing that free agency and the legal tampering window is 2 weeks away. Mm-hmm. So it's just a firestorm of information and all these possibilities.
Well, you understand that the term illegal tampering came into being because of here.
Yeah.
Did
because
it really?
Of here. Because when everybody got here, everybody was doing it.
Everybody was tampering?
Yeah. And so they said, okay.
Go ahead and have at it. And
here's your window.
Mm-hmm.
Now do it and just, get it out in the open. This is a huge, because you can go to the league meetings. I've been to the league meetings in my career, done all those things. But here, everybody is here. Everybody's here. And it's you can gain a lot from this. Every year that I've come since I haven't been coaching, what's this, my 9th year doing this on with Titans Radio, I meet with coaches, positional coaches, to find out what's the trends in the league. What's going on now? What's going on in the coaching world? Trends in the league. Are we playing more quarters? Are we playing more what's happening? I talk to all but this is where you can gather all of that. And in my position now, they'll talk to me because, I'm not playing anybody. Mm-hmm. I'm not coaching against anybody anymore. So, but all that information is here if you know how to retrieve it.
It is interesting, all of the rules conversations that are happening and the technology conversations. A lot of the time, those are things that we hear about a little bit later. The actual, big NFL owners meetings are coming up, I believe, in May. Yep, here we go, May 20th and 21st. So they're usually a little bit later in the spring. It's interesting that those conversations are starting to be had now. We're seeing things happening a little bit earlier. And is it just that the media is getting wind of it and reporting it and people are talking about it more? Or there's actually some earlier conversations that are starting to happen about how we want to see the game continue to evolve and change and what we want to look different?
The answer is, again, they put it out there, and then they want it to soak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they let it soak.
Condition you.
They let it soak in, and again, it's more of, and chumming the water is a great analogy for it. To see, how's the weight out there? How's everybody taking this? And it also gives you a chance to put it out in the Ethernet.
Yeah.
And then just see how everybody responds to it, because that's what you want. You want a response, because you don't want to come out and surprise anybody with just a dogmatic, here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You let it soak for a while. It all starts here.
And there's been a few reactions we've seen just in general. The tush push, most of the people that have watched this play, no, don't ruin that. If you can't stop it, it's a football play. You mentioned the spotting of the ball, and it seemed like most of the fans that you see on social media is like, yeah, get that right. Because it's or penalties that were missed. Like, I had this conversation before with somebody that's just like, the game is so big now. The operation of the NFL, Coach Mack, we speak about this all the time. The NFL is so big, and you throw in also the money, gambling side of stuff. One or two plays or missed penalties can cost somebody who's invested also in the betting and also the games too. So getting those small details without interrupting the game so much is going to be crucial for the NFL to continue to build the brand up, because what fans hate is this, unless it's on the opposite side and it's a good thing to happen to you. But a big play happens and you're the home team ready to celebrate a 70-yard play down the field, and there's a yellow flag. Or there's a hands to the face that may not have been there. Or there was a face. Those big plays that happen, you want to let the game flow appropriately, and having those rule changes and this conversation happens, Coach Mack, like you said, to chum up the conversation, is necessary too for the fans.
It absolutely is, and that's the whole thing, because the appeal of this game is now worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
It's worldwide, and it's big. The other thing that's happened, I mean, you played for a lot of years in this league. The game has gotten faster. Just because of the way the rules have been expanded. It's expanded to score points, but to score points, then you've got to be able to widen the field. And to widen the field, when I say that, the game has started to be played so much faster with what's going on offensively, and defenses have to counteract to that. And the officials, all anybody wants is consistency from crew to crew to call it. They're not going to be 100% right every time, but you want consistency. What's happening now is you've got a lot of convolution as far as to what is and what isn't. That's where the problem comes in.
And then the other side of it, too, it does, to your point, help mold and smooth over the players, too. I can remember 3 rule changes that have come and stayed, but now aren't just penalties or fines. The one is horse collar. That's a penalty. T.O. famously got pulled down the horse collar that broke his ankle. That was one. I remember specifically in the mid-2000s, well, the teens, you were able to challenge pass interference. We had a play when I was playing in New Orleans that could have been we challenged pass interference, the offensive pass interference, and we didn't win. But that penalty somewhat gone away. And then another, the way running backs run the football. When you used to duck your head and run into guys, they started flagging running backs for that. That now isn't one of those on-the-field penalties. I think they somewhat hashed that out a little bit. I think now it's a fine if you use your helmet as a weapon on the field. So those are the things that happen to where you condition players for the safety of the game, the flow of the game, and just the efficiency of it too. Some of it's good. Some of it's not. It's an adjustment period, as you said, though, with how you incorporate more.
There it is.
You know, when we're here with all of these conversations that are happening, we also have the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that we don't usually get to talk to throughout the course of a season. A lot of national pundits, a lot of analysts. It's really just a good time to hear what the outside world is saying about the Tennessee Titans. I'll ask you guys, because you were part of these conversations too. Did you have a favorite person that we talked to, or someone that you thought was exceptionally insightful or interesting. Ramon, I'll start with, or Rhett, I'll start with you.
That's my brother.
I
You
looked.
couldn't even tell. Look at that.
I
You
was
can't
even
tell.
looking Rhett dead in the face. Like, I don't know what happened. One of you has to change your name. No two R names.
R&R.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody, you guys choose.
First of all, I thought all of the interviews that we were fortunate enough to have, I think they all went really well and very informative. I'm always interested to talk to Dane Brugler. The beast is the gift that keeps on giving. About 2 weeks before the draft, mid-April, everybody and their brother has been asking him out because he'll follow around. We'll go podium to podium looking at candidates and talk to each other. And, hey, when's it come out? When's it come out? But just to catch up with him for a moment and for him to be able to take in this event and talk to these guys. He had a fantastic piece that came out at The Athletic this week about one of the top cornerbacks in this draft, Siobhan Revel from East Carolina, who will not participate in the testing and things. He'll be, he's been here for the interviews. He's recovering from an ACL surgery he had in mid-October. But the adversity and the things that coaches like Coach Mack would be sitting in those rooms talking to those guys about, what adversity have you had to overcome? This guy, it is amazing. His senior year in high school in North Carolina, his father has this coughing fit and blacks out, and they hit this concrete abutment, and all of his siblings are in there. Siobhan Revel, we're talking about a skull fracture, jaw fracture, multiple stitches, nose, all these things. So that kind of wrecks what he's trying to do. Now, he admittedly said, I didn't study as much as I should have, so I didn't have the grades. So he goes to a small college, and, that gets wiped out in year one in 2020 because of COVID. And so he ends up working in a dang Amazon distribution center with his father. His father his father takes him to these tryouts, and East Carolina is there and sees him go with a 38.5-inch vert, runs a 4.40.
Wow.
He tests off the charts.
Yeah.
They immediately offer him a scholarship, and he can ball now. I mean, teams, he's blocking field goals and punts, and he's a good corner, returned a touchdown last year for like 57 yards for a score. And then he has the ACL. So he has just he had a sibling, he had a sister that had renal failure and died of kidney disease. Like anything you can think of, just about, this kid's been through it. And again, anybody knows me knows I love to hear the stories, because these guys are people just like we are. They are not immune to life's problems. And this guy's had his share, and he is on the threshold of playing in the National Football League, regardless of the ACL recovery.
And potential first rounder still.
Oh, I think
Yeah.
if there's no ACL, we may be talking about him as what would be an NBA lottery pick.
Top 5 type of guy. Mine would be Jordan Reid.
Yep.
Just hearing the conversation about how he feels about the quarterbacks, being in a position to be number one and get your guy for the future. It's interesting, too, with some of the people that you talk to, how one feels about one quarterback, the top 2 guys, I guess, in this draft, Cam versus Shador, and their styles and what's good for your franchise and what it can do for you. Hearing those types of things is super unique for people that are outside the city that look at what the Titans could do possibly. And his stance on Cam, I thought, was super unique, and how you look for the intangibles of how he plays football and goes down the field and what it could do for your franchise. And it's always like this, too, when those guys speak. Everybody's looking for last year's guy. Last year's guy was Jaden Daniels, and how you want to correlate that to what it can do for your squad. Mac, you said all the time, this is a crapshoot in all of these picks, but the time and effort that these guys, these Nationals guys, put into the evaluation of these prospects is very insightful, and it's refreshing, too, to hear their stance on how they feel about the local team. So I thought he was super unique, and also just his ascending up in his world of sports, too, to still be that detailed, to want to be a worker's mentality. This, being in these rooms, isn't easy. You don't just the invites happen, but the ones that are good at their jobs, the Jordan Reids, the Dane Bruglers of the world, the Daniel Jeremiahs, those are the guys right there that are sustainable. And also this, too, you trust their words behind it. There's not like they got a pitch behind it to elevate themselves. It's about the prospects.
Daniel Jeremiah and Charles Davis are my favorites because, and for 2 different reasons. Of course, they do stuff together, but Daniel Jeremiah has done this for a living. He's done this with Ozzie Newsome in Baltimore, was one of the best ground scouts there ever has been. And he's made picks in a draft room with his mortgage on the line. Daniel Jeremiah understands. Charles Davis has got a tremendous ability to understand players from a different aspect. And when you visit with Charles Davis, he's a lot like Rhett. He gets the background on these guys that goes pretty deep into where they are, and that's what makes him so good at what he does. So both of those guys together, they're always my favorites to sit here and talk to, because you can talk real ball with them, but you also talk about what's important to the players. And that's what it boils down to in this thing.
What I love about Charles, though, too, is his ability to talk FBS and FCS football. Like, he hits every angle of college sports. And to bring that to the professional and sit on that stage with NFL Network, whoever else invites him up, because he can go on anybody's stage, is super unique in how detailed he is with it.
Now, Ramon, you read my mind mentioning Jordan Reid, because we have that conversation with Jordan Reid, and we are going to share it with the OT people right now. Whether you're buying or selling tickets to a Titans game or any live event in Nashville, SeatGeek is the place to do it. SeatGeek, the official ticketing partner of the Tennessee Titans, so Titans fans can fan. Home is the forefront of all we do. It's why we're so committed to caring for the places and spaces in which we work and live. Ashley, the official furniture provider of the Tennessee Titans. Little Caesars is the official pizza partner of your Tennessee Titans. Download the Little Caesars app and get your favorites delivered today. Delivery fees apply. Now, back to the OTP. ESPN's Jordan Reid joins us right here on the OTP. Jordan, you are like the dude when it comes to ESPN draft coverage now. You cannot turn your television on without seeing your shining face somewhere. How does it feel to have reached this point in your career? I mean, you're kind of a big deal right now.
I wouldn't go that far. I'm the young guy in the ESPN group. I'm just trying to enjoy my youth while I can. But I mean, this is like Christmas morning for me. I'm just so excited to be here talking prospects and talking team fits and all this other stuff, and what better way to start it off with a team with the #1 overall pick, right?
Yeah, exactly. Here we are. You're welcome.
Yeah.
You've done some of the All-Star games.
Yeah.
Now we're here at the Combine. How do you use what you see at the All-Star games to kind of inform or influence what you're seeing here at the Combine, and then put that together to predict what in the world is going to happen in this draft?
Well, the great thing about the All-Star Game circuit is that you get to see them go against the best. And I always like to compare that to small school guys. And one, for example, is somebody like a Gray Zabel of North Dakota State, an offensive lineman. He goes in, he has the best week of any player regardless of position. So now maybe you came into that week with some question marks about how would he play against guys in the ACC, the SEC, the Big Ten, or whatever. Now he goes out and he plays well against those guys. Maybe that translates over into the NFL, and it kind of quiets your complaints or maybe some of the criticisms that you had about some of the competition that he was going against. But those guys that played in those Power 4 conferences, now you're seeing them go against other guys or the best of the best that they will be playing maybe on the NFL level. So it's just more so of the competition aspect for small school guys and also the Power 4 players too.
So you're able to take that experience and compare it with the workouts they're doing here at the Combine that are also a great equalizer, right? Because it doesn't matter where you go to school. If you can run fast, jump high, and do the drills, you're set, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Combine is just a piece of the puzzle. And I know a lot of people put a lot of stock into the Combine. I do as well, but it's more so of just a piece of the resume or the draft portfolio that you're putting together for these guys. And then also with really the increase in a lot of analytically driven teams, you have guys that have to meet certain thresholds or some guys that may be outliers. So now if you have a cluster at a certain position, now I have more data points on some guys to really differentiate them and slot them on the draft board.
The mention of analytics is interesting because teams more and more are incorporating analytics, building out analytics departments. Do you think that as just the game evolves and the way that teams are scheming up the game and everything throughout time, do you think we're going to see more of those data points kind of reveal themselves, I guess? Are teams going to start measuring more things because they're trying to gain some sort of an advantage?
Yeah, absolutely, especially when I can factor in probability to the draft, just because all of this is a big guess, right? There's no certain thing, no matter if it's Andrew Luck or, whoever. there's really no way of really telling which guy is going to translate the best. But if I can include probability and give myself more data points to give myself what I like to call breadcrumbs that could lead to a prospect really succeeding on the next level, I'm going to take as many data points as I can get. So the combine is really another piece to those data points that could potentially lead to having productive players on my ball team.
Jordan, when it comes down to looking at and evaluating the top end, as you mentioned, the Tennessee Titans are being number one right now with the ability, if they choose to move back. You said it's a meat potatoes draft. Like, what does that actually look like if a team is drafting somebody even in the top 10?
Well, when we say meat and potatoes draft, it's more so of adding depth and competition to your team. There isn't a lot of blue chip prospects at the top of the draft, and there's only 3 in this draft class for me. It's Travis Hunter, the DB/wide receiver out of Colorado, Abdul Carter, the defensive end out of Penn State, and then also Mason Graham at Michigan. Those are the only true 3 blue chip prospects to me in this year's draft class. So once we get to that 4th or 5th overall pick, I think we're going to have a lot of surprise picks in this draft class just because of the lack of blue chip or high-end talent in this year's draft class.
It's fascinating. Everybody mentions Mason Graham, but nobody's like outwardly talking about him.
Yeah.
Maybe because the Titans have a quarterback need. So that leads me to, how do you judge these 2 quarterbacks? Cam has the aggressiveness down the field, arm, power. And Shedeur seems to have the finesse of the game, be able to have the touch. What are you looking at when you draft one of these 2 guys that you say, I like this more than that, when you really look at the meat and potatoes of it?
Yeah, well, 2 vastly different quarterbacks stylistically, but resume-wise, they're very similar. And if you think about it, both of them came from the FCS ranks, with Cam Ward coming from FCS Incarnate Word, and then also Shedeur Sanders with Jackson State, transitioned to the FBS level, Cam with Washington State to Miami, and then Shedeur to Colorado, but stylistically very different. Cam is more so of your loose, aggressive type of thrower down the field that has a shortstop-like throwing motion is what I like to call it. But he needs to be a little bit more selective with his aggression. And what I've been telling everybody about Cam is that he's that guy that you instruct him to jump off the 10 or 15-foot high dive, and sometimes he gets curious and he wants to go up to 25 and 30 feet. But that can be a good thing sometimes just because that's the life of a playmaker. And that's why I said I'm different from the consensus about Cam Ward. I love Cam Ward. I'm a big Cam Ward fan just because when you look at all the quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and I'm not comparing him to these guys, just talking about from a playmaking standpoint outside of structure, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, they have the ability to make an offensive coordinator right even when they call the wrong play. And I believe Cam Ward has that type of ability on the next level. And everybody talks about his selective aggression. I think that can be a good thing for him. Now, does he need a hard position coach? Absolutely. He's going to have to reel it in sometimes. But what's going to have to happen with Cam is that you're going to have to know how to straddle the line of letting him be him, but also telling him, like, hey, we got to reel it in a little bit and just take the first option on your progression and don't hunt for the deep play down the field. So whoever coaches Cam, whether it's Brian Callahan, Brian Daboll, or whoever, they're going to have to understand how to straddle the line of letting him be him, but also reining him in a little bit too, just because he can get a little bit careless with the ball. But for every 2 or 3 mistakes that he makes in games, he's going to make you stand in your seat 9 or 10 plays too. He's going to have that wow factor. So, and we saw it in the 4th quarter comebacks, even though it was some of his wrongdoing against Cal and then also Virginia Tech. But what I love the most about Cam is that whenever he's on the field, no matter the moment in the game, there's always a belief that you can come back with him in the game. And that's what I believe he showed at Miami. Now, with Shedeur Sanders, I'm going to have a hard time selling him more than Cam Ward after that, right? After that spiel.
That was strong. That was strong.
What do we have?
But with Shedeur Sanders, the polar opposite stylistically, he's more so of your polished pocket passer whose game really evolves around what we've seen in years past, you know, from guys like Tom Brady and Joe Burrow, guys that win with their mind from the pocket with the ball placement, being able to understand the difference between accuracy and ball placement. And what I mean by that is accuracy, you just put the ball in the right spot where your wide receivers can catch the ball, but ball placement, you're throwing it away from defense to where they have no chance of being able to catch it. And you know, with Shedeur Sanders, I believe he has really good ball placement, really good accuracy, but also he has that poise about himself. We're talking about somebody that's really been in the spotlight his entire life. I mean, he's the son of Deion Sanders, arguably the greatest athlete that's ever lived. So whether he goes 1, 2, wherever, he's used to being in the spotlight. So that's what I love about Shedeur, just being in the spotlight, the accuracy, the ball placement, and just the awareness that he plays with.
Pedaling back on Cam Ward for a second, you were on the record saying he's severely underrated in
Absolutely.
this draft. You're bullish on him. You even think that he might have his place in last year's draft above a couple of guys.
Yeah, so I think the top 3 would have stayed the same. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and also Drake May. But he's ranked ahead of J.J. McCarthy for me. I believe he would have been the 4th quarterback off of the board last year, just because when I look at the traits of Cam Ward, and I just talked about a lot of that stuff, the ability to play with so much poise, and then just the relaxed demeanor that he plays with as well, going into a situation of where being able to build a program around him, that's something that wouldn't be foreign to him at all either. Now it's just a matter of how well does he fit in Callahan's system. But I've always had the belief of if you're a great coach, you fit your scheme around your quarterback, as opposed to force-fitting a quarterback into your scheme. So I think that's a decision that they have to make.
And that is the philosophy of Brian Callahan.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I'd much rather, conform to what that player's attributes and strengths are as to make them, Muhammad come to the mountain, so to speak. All right, I want to ask you something else. On X, you put out recently your favorite player / team scheme marry-up. Outside of the quarterbacks and the top pick, what's another player that is a good fit for the Titans that's here at the Combine?
I would
put
like
you on
to
the spot, didn't I?
They have to figure out the right side of that offensive line. They tried so much last year, so many different combinations. But one player I think really fits into their scheme, his name is Emory Jones out of LSU. He's played primarily right tackle during his career, but he's one of those dudes that he wants to embarrass everybody that's in front of him. And I believe he projects better as a guard on the next level, but him having that right tackle experience, and he's played a little bit of guard too, and also having that guard experience, now you're talking about somebody that can play right guard or can play right tackle. So now you have a good problem to have as opposed to a guy that's only played right tackle or only played guard, or we're trying to fit him into a certain spot. Right now, the Titans just need bodies out there on their right side, and they need somebody that can start at either spot. So Emory Jones somewhere on day 2 I think will be a fantastic fit.
And you're right, because we saw him in those one-on-ones in Mobile.
Yeah.
And he wanted to embarrass. You're right.
He did. When you speak about this offensive line group, I just want to have your perspective on the fact that you say this guy played tackle in college, but he's a guard. That doesn't mean they're a bad offensive lineman. It's just What do you mean by that? It just don't fit the – I know what it means, but for our listeners, they just don't fit the mold of what you want in a tackle in the NFL is what you say in those moments?
That, or sometimes some players are good players at tackle, but they project better inside a guard. Peter Skoronski is a great example of that. He played primarily tackle at Northwestern, and then he projects inside to guard. They put him at guard from day 1, and he's gone on to be a productive starter. So it's not a knock saying a guy isn't going to be, a great tackle on the next level. It's just more so he has more upside inside a guard. And one guy I believe is very similar is Will Campbell. I know a lot of people are projecting him as a tackle on the next level, but when he faces speed and he faces that length, he's prone to struggle. Now let's put him inside where he has 2 guys around him and he can use his strength and use some of that hand maturity that he has inside just because he's a very physical player. And while I believe he can be a fine tackle on the next level, I think he can be a really good guard.
I think there was a guy at the Senior Bowl, Wyatt Milam out of West Virginia. I moved from tackle to guard too. So seeing that situation right there, I felt like at the Senior Bowl he kind of took some bad heat because he was transitioning into a guard. It's different inside, okay? And that's where it feels like grace needs to be given to those dudes that say, I'll still take him in the first round. Like Will Campbell. Speed to me doesn't seem to be his thing. He might run a friggin' 4.9 over the next couple of days. But I see him move like an interior guy. But you get 10 years out of a guy, that's still a success story as an early first rounder, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And the player that I've compared him to is Sam Cosmi. Sam Cosmi has gone on to be one of the better guards in the league, but primarily when he was coming out of Texas, he played tackle. So that's not saying that he's going to be a bad player as a tackle. I just see him projecting better inside at guard. And, online stuff, that's why I don't get online a whole bunch. People take it as a knock, but I think Will Campbell is one of the better offensive linemen in this draft class. I just see his upside greater and getting more productive years out of him as a guard.
When you mentioned the top 3 in this class at the bell of the ball, Mason Graham, Travis Hunter, and
Abdul Carter.
Abdul Carter.
Yep.
Okay, you're the Titans. I hear that. They probably feel the exact same way, too. I think a lot of folks have said, like, there's probably like 12 to 15 true first-rounders. So if you're going after – so do you separate the quarterback draft from the best available draft when you're the Titans picking at 1?
That's the tough part. And, I've been saying this about everybody that's asked me about the number 1 overall pick. I think this comes down to one question and one question only for Mike Berganzi. In year 1, is he comfortable attaching his tenure to one of these quarterbacks? If he's not comfortable doing that, then you look to trade back. If you don't feel good about Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, try to trade back. If not, take one of Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. If you feel good about one of these quarterbacks and attaching them to your tenure in year 1, go ahead and select one of them. Just because at the end of the day, nothing matters in a roster rebuild until you get quarterback solidified. You can have a loaded roster everywhere else, but if you do not have a quarterback, you do not give yourself a chance, especially in the AFC, where predominantly most of the top quarterbacks in the NFL are. So if you don't have that quarterback solidified, you're playing with one hand tied behind your back.
All right, so Jordan, you mentioned a couple of the position groups that are strong in this draft. And I want to ask, is the wide receiver position, is this week, is this a place to settle out some of that? Because we know who some of the guys are at the top, then it's a little sketchy in there. And then the belly of the draft has some value throughout.
Yeah, it does. And, this isn't as strong of a group as we've seen in years past. Like, we've seen guys go top 10, top 15. It isn't that group. We maybe could go get one inside the top 15, honestly, and that's Teteroy McMillan, the receiver out of Arizona. But outside of that, there just isn't a lot of top-end talent. But you get into day 2 and day 3, I think there's a lot of potential wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s in this draft class, which is great for the Titans just because you need somebody behind Calvin Ridley right now. So I believe it aligns really well with the Titans' the Titans' weaknesses right now as far as where they need or have some holes on the roster. So even though this isn't a high-end wide receiver class, they're able to fill in some depth on the wide receiver depth chart.
All right, let me hit you with one and get your opinion on a converted quarterback who played at Louisiana Tech, then transferred to Ole Miss, and Trey Harris.
Yeah.
That was Jackson Dart's guy.
Yeah.
And the guy really made a nice career for himself in his time in Oxford.
Yeah. He's one of those long striding, tall receivers that's just lanky and just towers over everybody. But he's not overly fast, but somehow he just strides and runs past everybody on tape. So I'm really interested to see how he performs at the Combine, but he catches everything. He had ridiculous numbers when he was healthy. Really was on pace to lead the country in receiving yards. And we know in that Lane Kiffin scheme, he's going to push the ball down the field. So something that they're going to be able to do with him if they were to draft him is push the ball down the field. But the great thing about that is he's going to open up everything underneath as well.
How much does scheme affect quarterbacks coming out of college? Because it was funny watching the Cam and Shedeur back and forth from well-off media and everything, and they're going at each other, and he told them, well, you had a running game. So what does that matter? You speak about Lane Kiffin or this air raid stuff that they do in college now, or do you just look at the talent?
Ooh, man, how much time we have? I'm a former quarterback. I can talk about this all day long. But you have to remember that things are so much different for college quarterbacks. And take the Senior Bowl, for example. This is the first time a lot of these guys have actually even called a play in a huddle before, just because everything is so signal-based and given to them in their offense that they don't even understand the verbiage and being able to relay it to everybody and then actually go out and execute it as well. So scheme matters a lot, and you have to initially just see how much they can handle. But after that, you have to be able to gauge and really dumb it down for them if you can, just because, especially if you're taking a guy at number 1 overall, he's going to go out there and start. No matter what. If you take a guy at 1, he's going out there to start. So you really have to gauge just how much he can handle and then just really force feed him if he can handle it as the year goes on. So initially dumb it down, and you do all that stuff in training camp. But after that, that's when you start to open up the playbook a little bit more.
But does that not make more of a case for putting guys in situations to be able to grow and learn behind somebody, which I know teams don't like to do anymore? Mm-hmm. Teams want to draft their guy, throw him out there, have him play. We're the best in the league. Let's keep moving for 15 years. But in reality, if you're adjusting, like you just said, to having everything be signal-based and have everything be kind of spoon-fed to you, and now all of a sudden you've got to keep all this stuff in your brain and you've got to be able to communicate it to other guys in the huddle and do it quickly and effectively and efficiently, is that not all of a sudden an argument for maybe investing in a guy, taking him a little bit lower, give him the opportunity to learn, and then see what you have?
It really just depends on the guy, honestly. But I've always said if you're drafting a quarterback, you want an experienced veteran behind him just because there's nothing like that shared experience. And, for example, Bryce Young with Andy Dalton is a great example. Marcus Mariota with Jaden Daniels. You want to have that type of experienced veteran behind them just because those guys have been through the ringer already 10-plus years. And those little nuggets and those little tidbits, they can help from study habits to execution, understand how to go out and apply things at practice. And then sometimes some guys just get overwhelmed. Like the best thing that happened to Bryce Young last year was him sitting out a few games just because he was able to recalibrate, collect himself, and understand and now see, like, where were my flaws? How can I go out and how can I be better and execute it? They put him back out there. He's like a completely different player as opposed to Jaden Daniels and C.J. Stroud. Things click for them from day one. So it really just depends on the guy.
Right. That's true. Hey, Titans fans, with a Kroger Boost membership, you'll score big with double fuel points, free delivery, and lots more. Go to Kroger.com/boost for details. Kroger, the official grocer of the Tennessee Titans. Tighten up. The OTP presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. When it's game day for your health coverage, trust Farm Bureau Health Plans to draw up a winning play for you. They've been covering Tennesseans for nearly 80 years. Now, back to the OTP. So now we are heading back to Nashville, Tennessee. But free agency is on the horizon. Mac, how do teams take what happened here and use that to inform their free agency decision?
Well, I mean, those things go on concurrently.
Okay.
This goes on. You've got to talk about them both in separate pieces, but it's all a piece of one pie. It has to be because one affects the other a lot, and especially not only with the way that you are constructing your roster, but also the way you're constructing your salary cap. All of those things, they cannot be talked about separately. They have to be talked about together. So they're both talked about. I mean, it's an interlocking puzzle, and it's important that everybody understands each end of the puzzle. You've got different groups that concentrate on either side of it, but they've got to come together, and the big decision makers have to put both those pieces together at the same time. So it's going on right now too.
Mac, that's why Mike Borgonzi, Titans general manager, told us it's the February darkness. You know, you're in the facility grinding tape, and you're going 7A to 7P and then side meetings till midnight because you're looking not only at the college prospects but the free agent stuff too.
Well, sure, and it's important. It's like when you come in as a new staff. I mean, you spend a lot of times working on your playbook. You spend times working on the current roster that you're getting to know, but you also have to spend your time looking at prospects coming into you, but it all is one part of one. It has to go on together. It cannot go on separately, and it doesn't.
Ramon, as a player, how plugged in are you to everything that's happening within your team when it comes to free agency coming up, when it comes to who they may or may not be looking at in a draft? How plugged in do you stay to something like that?
It depends on the era that you're in as a player. That is huge. If it's your contract year, everything. Okay, what is my agent saying that the team is saying about me? What can I do? What information, as you said, are you bringing back to me? I'm plugged in then. Later in my years, when I got, let's go years 8, 9, 10, 11, every single year, who they're talking about is a position of need up here. Are they looking at guards? Is this a good guard class this year? Who else is another free agent guard that I might have to compete against? It's more than just playing the game. Like, we play a game behind a business model is what I tell a lot of people. The game is the forefront, but the business inner workings that happen, it causes anxiety, a lot of stress. The need to perform is always there too because we did this last year. You did it last year. Coach Mack, you've done this for 30-plus years. There is a new guy every single year coming in, and the moment that you slip is the moment pick number 18 is in your spot, and here you are finding another team to go to. It is a fragile but very, very, very necessary game that you play this time of the year. It can be fun if you are a starter and you know what solidified yourself as a good teammate, but it's just a constant reminder, if I can be honest about it, about how quick you can be out of this league and outside in that lobby trying to find a team that'll look at you.
So the offseason isn't necessarily the relaxing time that everyone envisions it to be.
The best breath of fresh air I had was the call I had to say I'm done.
Yeah.
At the end of the season, let's say the season ends January 5th, in that old days before they had the 17th game, I'd probably go up until February 2nd of just, okay, I can relax a little bit. I couldn't fully relax because I know workouts had to start early February. And then I tell people most times, you're serious about your craft, and sometimes there are uber athletes that are just born. They can put on shoes and just run and jump, and life comes to them easy in the sports world. But for the majority of the NFL, when the season is on and you're in it and you're an active player, you're never off. So these conversations matter. Think about the Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. He's in a conversation that his team is eyeballing the quarterback. He's got guaranteed money for them.
Yeah.
But his replacement may be drafted this year depending upon what's available to Cleveland whenever they decide to pick. So, Amie, you pay attention. You try to block it out. That's where that mental fortitude and mental toughness that we always speak about plays a part in surviving, because a lot of it can just be that too. Survive, availability, and being a system that allows you to be successful. It's almost scientific, but it's not. It's a game of big dudes hitting other big dudes that are fast, and some are bigger. It's unique, man. I love it, but it can make you hate it at the same time, because that stress level, Coach Matt, I'm sure as a coach, you never really, unless you're winning the Super Bowl, the stress of performing and having a very good team is always there.
39 years ago, Mike Ditka hired me, and the first thing he told me when he offered me the job, which shocked me, and he said, just remember, kid, I think you're going to have a nice career, but just remember, every day in this league, for you, just starting out, for me, though he was a Hall of Fame player and a Hall of Fame coach, every day in this league, if you're in the guts of it, is an interview. Every day is an interview. And the day you forget that is the day somebody's going to step over you.
Yes, indeed.
That's really good advice.
It is.
Well, it lasted for me for 39 years. It worked somehow.
My advice on my first day was, get a hobby. Most of us drink. That counts. And I was like, all right, welcome to the NFL, kid. Let's go.
Let's go.
Yours is a little bit more sage. I think I'm going to steal yours.
And what Coach Mack didn't finish saying, too, is there is a long line of players, coaches, front office personnel that cannot wait to jump over you to take your job, too. The list is long.
And it is every day.
Rhett, I want to ask you to peel back the curtain, if you wouldn't mind, because we have been here in Indianapolis gathering all this information, talking to all these different people. You've been at the podiums listening to everybody talk and really getting an understanding of these players. What do you do with all of the stuff we've gathered this week to use and just organize and put it all together in preparation for the draft at the end of April?
So I spent the last few days talking. What I do, first of all, is the super duper big prospects. I don't go to those podiums. I will go to eavesdrop and hear questions and answers. But there's so many people there, it's hard to get a recording device there to get some good audio. So I go to some of the lesser populated ones, especially ones with prospects that I've been reading about, that I like, that I've seen, and interesting stories. And a lot of times you'll be able to ask them just straight up one-on-one questions as people mill in and out of those podium piles. And so anyway, I'll take all of that stuff and I will go back and chop it up into either cuts that we'll use during our draft coverage, or, if it's something good, I'll have, a couple of questions and answers in there when a player is selected. And, hopefully it's a Titan that's, they've been selected as. But it's just the genesis of this conversation and all week. And what Mac reminds us is this is still dealing with people. It's a people business. And so I'm very interested in the people involved in seeing their dreams come true and seeing how close they are to their reality. For example, I talked about this guy when we were at the Senior Bowl a few weeks ago, but the linebacker from South Carolina, Demetrius Knight, long and winding road, and able to talk to him some more at his podium availability this week. He was a running quarterback in high school at 215 pounds. And so that's why he spent 4 years at Georgia Tech trying to figure out how to play off-ball linebacker. And so between all the extra years of eligibility that, college players have gotten and COVID, the whole thing, he went to Charlotte, played there. And he said that's where he really learned how to play his position and play it with speed. And at the 240 pounds he'll weigh in at this week. And be able to kiss the dreams of being a running quarterback goodbye. Because he said, I'll be honest, I thought I saw myself at this event as a running quarterback. And he said just how blessed he is now to be able to show off the testing abilities and show off his brightness. And he is bright with these interviews. He's got a little boy 7 months old. He's got a little girl that's 2. He's married, has 2 children, and I told you he's the guy who was driving for Uber Eats or whatever after ball games on Saturdays in Charlotte just to make ends meet. And then he went to South Carolina, had a really nice year, put on some good tape, and he's going to have his chance to play in the NFL.
That's awesome. Guys, I love this event. It just makes me so happy to be here, but now we're going back to Nashville, and there's more work to be done because at the end of this spring, we need to have a roster on our hands for the starting of a roster. So there's a lot to do. It would be good to get back home and get back to work. So thank you guys for all of your hard work this week. This is a bear of a week. We do a lot. We go hard. We eat a lot of really good food. Just not to make anybody jealous, but we are eating like kings this week. But now it's time to go home, maybe get on an exercise bike or something, and get back to work. So thank you all for all of your hard work. Thank you to all of our guests throughout this week. We so appreciate your time. And thank you to the OT people. Thank you for listening and coming along with us on this crazy trip. We look forward to getting back to Nashville and just keeping this whole thing rolling. So for Coach Mac, Rhett Bryan, Ramon Foster, I'm Amie Wells. I know who you guys are. Just shut up. Thank you for listening to the OTP.